February 2nd, 2016 meeting of the Edina City Council and the Edina Housing and Redevelopment Authority. Roll call, please, Ms. Mangan.
Member Brindle.
Here.
Member Staunton.
Here.
Member Stewart.
Here.
Member Swenson.
Here.
Mayor Hovland.
Here. We have a form of meeting agenda in front of us this evening. Is there anyone who wishes to modify the agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to adopt the meeting agenda as shown. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried. On the consent agenda, which is next up, we have 9 items. Is there anyone on the council that wishes to remove an item from the consent agenda?
No, thank you.
All right. I'll entertain a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to adopt the consent agenda. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Carried. I don't think we have anything in the special recognitions and presentations category this evening. Manager Neal?
No, we do not.
And public hearings? No public hearings this evening.
No public hearings?
Community comment for anyone in the audience that wishes to come forward. I'll tell you that you'd have 3 minutes. We use the lighting system on the side podiums, and you'll get a green light when you're starting, and when you've got to wrap up, you'll have 30 seconds left, and the yellow light will come on to forewarn you that you have 30 seconds left. And when the red light is showing, you should stop your comments. So is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address council with respect to any particular issue? All right, seeing no one coming forward, we'll move on to another portion of the agenda, reports and recommendations. First matter there is the City of Edina proposed emergency operations plan. Manager Neal, you're going to introduce the topic, and then Chief Schmitz is going to follow you.
I am. Thank you, Your Honor, members of council. What we're presenting to you tonight is an amendment to our existing emergency operations plan. And this evening you're going to hear from Fire Chief Tom Schmitz. In 2012, we changed the responsibility. We shifted the responsibility for management of our emergency management system from the police department to the fire department, and the chief of the fire department as the chief emergency manager. Mr. Schmitz, Chief Schmitz has been reporting to emergencies for 25 plus years as somebody in the field, and he's also had really quite a lot of experience in learning how to become a professional emergency manager. He's involved in the certificate program that requires 260 hours of class and training time to get that certificate. He's 2 courses away and going to wrap it up this year, right? Shortly, very shortly, actually. So Chief Schmitz is going to talk to you a little bit about the structure of our plan and also more specifically what the amendments are. So, Chief Schmitz.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Thank you.
council members, tonight what I'm doing is seeking your approval of the revised plan. And every few years we go through the plan and try to update it and make sure that we've got all the correct names, phone numbers, those types of things. The plan, we did an exhaustive evaluation of the radiologic and hazardous material sections of the plan this year. They were very detailed oriented. We consolidated and really condensed that down into kind of the primary objective of the plan is to be broad-based in nature, and it was just way too detailed. So we put a lot of that information into a resource or a reference manual that the document would refer to. Like Manager Neal said, the last time this plan was revised was in 2012 when it was brought over to the fire department, and prior to that, 2008. The plan, again, is broad in nature, and that's so we can, address all hazards that might come our way, from natural to man-made hazards. So we try to keep it really broad in nature. It follows a standard framework, and it may have language that is necessary for the county and the state, but may not seem like it makes a lot of sense for us. But nonetheless, our plan is evaluated at the county level, and they give us their stamp of approval. And that was part of the process in 2015 when we revised the plan, was working with the county. Our plan is broken into 2 primary sections: the basic plan, which has just boilerplate language in it, and then the annexes. And the annexes address areas like evacuation shelters, the warning and notification system, and departments within the city have responsibilities for those areas. We send those off to those department heads or people that are responsible for it. They review it, they make changes, and then get it back to us where we compile it all into that final document. We submit our plan to the county once we're done, so they have that on file. And like I said, our plan will reference other plans, other documents, and other resources that we can go to help us get down to the fine details of information we may need during an emergency. For the first time, as far as I know, we did send this plan off for legal review. Our attorney looked at it. We incorporated all of his recommendations into the plan. So with that, I'll open up for any questions you may have.
Questions for Chief Schmitz on the plan?
I do.
Member
Yes.
Brindle?
Chief Schmitz, one of the things that I have done as a technical writer is designed the disaster recovery plan for the Piper Jaffray Tower and the Dane Tower downtown back then. And it really was back then. But the standards really haven't changed. The methods of keeping track of everything have changed. And one of the things that I noted, and this is just a picky thing, by and large, I read the whole plan, and the things that stuck out to me were that there's more than one telephone list, and some of those lists have the same people's names in them, but there are different telephone numbers. So I'd want to make sure that you choose the phone number that is the right one. I can think of a couple of people where I noticed that there were two different phone numbers for them. And then just and like I said, these are picky things because you're the expert in the whole thing. I'm not going to evaluate the whole thing. But the other thing is whether names should be in there or whether positions should be. That this position is fulfilled, that position is fulfilled, because the names will change.
Right.
How often is it updated?
Like I said, when we started this in early 2015,
Yep.
You're probably the only one that recognized that some of those people aren't here anymore, and some phone numbers have changed, especially cell phones. I was looking at it,
Yep.
and my cell phone has changed since we started this process. So it's a continuous evaluation. I think the good thing about that is we all know within the city who's who at any given time, and we may quickly open up the plan and realize that a certain person is no longer with us, but we know who is in that position and how to get a hold of them. So I would agree, and we've had this conversation before with other emergency managers. There seems to be a tendency to always want to have names and phone numbers, and I agree if there's a way to get that out of there, it would make this revision a lot easier.
Being on the Public Health Commission, the Community Health Commission for Edina, a number of years ago, one of the things that we talked about was the pandemic, the anthrax, the what's the white,
Anthrax.
Anthrax. Oh, I said it right. Okay. The threats. And so I see that the city health, that Jeff Brown is listed in here, and therefore my guess is that the commission is apprised of this as well.
Correct.
For large spaces needed for evacuation, what are some of the large spaces? Because I didn't see faith communities included here, but they are some of our larger spaces in our community. So what are some of the large spaces people might go to?
Right, so this document would reference one of the annexes for evacuation shelters or other areas that we could use for refuge for our community. We would reference that document, and in that document, they would have things like the high schools, the elementary schools, the churches, all of those types of things.
Okay.
And I'm right now working with the county and updating that plan, which doesn't reside in our emergency operations plan. It's just too comprehensive, but that would be referenced when we needed to seek that type of facilities.
Okay. In looking online at, because this made me look at other cities and what they do, some of their preparedness plans appear as toolkits on their website. Is that something that is anticipated here?
we do have a section in our website. It's probably not as comprehensive, but one of the things I've identified is there's a lot of opportunity for us to build off of this. One of the initiatives this year is I will be writing a damage assessment plan, and that would be, it's referenced in the master plan, but the details of that don't exist.
Okay.
So things like that, in building our public education, definitely is something that we'll be looking at.
All right. And on that page, on the city website, it does reference something that's going to happen in 2012 in 2 different spots. So it probably needs to be looked at and changed, because I'm hoping whatever was supposed to happen happened, and now it can be updated to what's coming up.
Right.
But thank you. This is a huge undertaking. I am fully aware of how big it is, and I appreciate all of. I mean, it's an enormous task, but it is something that that everybody, everybody who works in Edina, everybody who goes to school in Edina, and everybody who lives in Edina should be happy and secure knowing that this is here and that we have a department that's prepared. And speaking of that, one more question.
Sure.
Do you ever have any drills?
Yeah, occasionally we'll have a drill. One of the things that we did last year was we did a mock emergency operations center stand-up where we brought everybody together. The plan is to have 2 of those a year.
Okay.
So
Where do you have them?
the emergency operations center is at fire station number 1.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, great, thank you.
Other questions? One of the things I've always worried about is not the man-made disaster is one thing, but the Mother Nature-made disaster where we've got seniors on York in buildings that are 12 to 20 stories high. And remember, Brenda alludes to drills. What do we know about what they are doing in those buildings? If we had a tornado, for example, to get those folks down out of those buildings that are taller and into some secure location in a lower level.
Yeah, that's a big emergency scene. We identify where those buildings are, their vulnerabilities, and then depending on the magnitude of the incident, we try to figure out, we have to prioritize where we're going to respond. But identifying where those facilities are, those facilities are supposed to have internal emergency plans, very similar to what we have for the citywide, and they would, in that situation, put their plan in operation, and then when we become available, we would assist where we can. We'd be bringing resources in from all over. That would be all part of implementing our plan. But if you had something that went down York Avenue, that's going to affect an awful lot of people. It's going to overwhelm our resources pretty fast.
So when you say they're supposed to have a plan, is there any way to mandate that they do and that they drill?
I'm not aware that we can mandate it, but we certainly will assist them. And we get this call frequently back to our fire prevention where they ask for assistance in developing their emergency plan, and we certainly help them with that.
Okay. Other questions for the chief? All right. Thanks, Chief. Go ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve the City of Edina Emergency Operations Plan.
Second?
Second, we got a motion and a second to adopt the emergency operations plan. Just further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Carried. Next. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to have Manager Neal address this proposed public purpose expenditure policy. It's an omnibus sort of approach. Manager Neal.
Thank you, Your Honor. This item comes to you because we have had some inquiry into the city about how we make decisions about business expenses. This particular public purpose expenditure policy comes to you adapted from a policy that we looked at from St. Louis Park. When we had some discussion following some of the questions that we received from the public and from members of council, we had a quick discussion with the city attorney. We asked the city attorney for some advice on how other communities handle this issue. He happens to be, and he and his firm, as you know, are the city attorneys for a number of different communities, and so he was able to provide us with some sample public purpose expenditure policies We had a chance to review some of those and really thought that the St. Louis Park model best fit our similar kind of customs and more importantly, our similar practices. So what we did from that standpoint was then to take a look at that as our model, to take a look at our existing practices for public purpose expenditures, looking at not only our business meals, memberships and dues, our employee recognition program, retirement program, the annual employee appreciation event that we do, and also our wellness committee. They have, St. Louis Park has a different kind of committee, but they have a similar kind of employee function, and provide some language that allows the council to examine the public purpose of those functions, and then to provide a general authorization for those to continue, in our case, to continue using the current practices. So we have put that language into this proposed policy. We had a chance to have it vetted by the city attorney, which he did, and we're bringing it to you tonight for a review and potentially an approval.
Questions for Manager Neal or for Attorney Knutson? I think it was, it's nicely done. So, questions from council? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Got a second?
Second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second to adopt the public purpose expenditure policy as shown. Any further discussion?
Yes. I just have a couple of comments. In the policy that we have here, we did get a policy from a different city, and we're looking at that. And there are some differences between them. So, Attorney Knutson, are you comfortable with this policy that it is that when a council member meets with a staff member, payment for over a meal, and you might wonder, why is it that we meet over a meal? And for one thing, it's the easiest time to get a hold of them. Particularly Manager Neal or some of the directors, that's the time they are available if you want a quick meeting with them. But also, more importantly than that, it's out in the public. And for me, I think it's a great demonstration of how we work together to meet out in the public and not always behind a door. At City Hall or somewhere else where we're not accessible or not visible. And almost every time when I'm out at a meeting, somebody comes by and either stops by to say hello or they ask a question. And it's so, I don't know, for me it's part of being available. But it's the payment for the meal that I want to make sure is kosher, if you will, and something that is defensible, and that if we are meeting for public purpose, that then payment for the meal can be made without question or without worry.
That is correct. If it's appropriate or necessary to meet at a mealtime, then it's appropriate for to do city business, then it's very appropriate for the city to pay for that food. No alcohol.
No alcohol. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Manager Neal.
You know, like all policies where there's discretion, I have in the city manager form of government, it's up to me to supervise the employees that work for me, and it's up to you to supervise me. When you think that, if you come upon a time where you think I have stretched my discretion too far, you're obliged to, you should tell me that. And that's how this policy actually becomes something that's appropriate for me, and it's appropriate for you as well.
Other questions? Member Brindle? And Attorney Knutson, knowing the good work that you do, I'm assuming that a lot of this, many elements of this policy, I guess that's a better way to put it, many elements of this policy have probably been vetted through your office and other city attorneys, and are somewhat responsive to what we've seen the state auditor do with respect to particular matters with cities on expenditures before.
That's absolutely correct.
All right. All right, we've got a motion and a second. We've had discussion. All those in favor of adopting the new public purpose expenditure policy, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Carried. And now next, wow, I don't even, how did you even get here with the weather? What time, did you come in yesterday from New York, or? So we've got the Bank of America. Director Teague is going to introduce this topic again. It's the Bank of America proposal. We're going to take another look at the site plan with the proposed variances, 6868 France Avenue South. Director Teague, please proceed.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I'll just give a very brief introduction and history of where we've been and what we'll be asking for this evening. So the council is asked to reconsider the site plan review with variances for the Bank of America. It's the old Think Bank site at the northwest corner of 69th and France. They were proposing to tear down that existing Think Bank building and build this new Bank of America. This is a look at the building that was proposed originally. So as the council likely recalls, staff and the Planning Commission recommended approval of the site plan with the variances. When the council reviewed it, there was a number of concerns, and the council authorized us to prepare findings for denial. One of the concerns was with the front setback of the building itself. They were asking for a variance along the street right here. Concerns with engagement of the street and the architecture of the building. Additional, what was requested here is variances for the drive-through, which is located on the west side of the building, and then for the number of parking spaces. So the applicant has responded to the concerns of the City Council, and they're back before you this evening. They have eliminated that front setback variance for the building itself, so the only variances that are requested now are for the location of the drive-through and the parking stalls. So in consideration of those variances in the site plan, the architecture of the building can't be used to deny the project. That said, they did respond to a lot of the concerns and concerns that the council had in regard to the architecture. And I'll just briefly go through those, and then the applicant will go through those as well. So just quickly, here again, the look of the previously proposed building. They have, this is the new rendering proposed this evening. You can see they've opened up a doorway to the street. They've added the windows along the top and the bottom, increased or improved the entrance to the Merrill Lynch as well. This is a look at the Valley View side. You can see they've added the windows. Again, they've introduced this new landscaping and retaining walls along the side to kind of tie in the whole project. Another one of the concerns that the council had was in regard to the location of the drive-through. The thought was they could relocate it on the site to meet the required setback. So the applicant did do that, and this would be a code-compliant drive-through. So you can see it would be behind the building, brought up to France. It would be very visible from France. Also, there's potential for redevelopment along France in this location here. So relocating that drive-through would make redevelopment in that area more difficult. So they went back to the original location and tried to address some of the concerns that the council had in regard to adding the pedestrian sidewalk along the street while still maintaining boulevard trees, and then also the screening to the drive-through itself. The applicant has some clear pictures of that area, and they'll go into it in a little more detail. So with that, I'll stop here. What the council is asked to do this evening is to consider these changes and then ask staff to come back at the next meeting with a resolution either for approval or denial of the proposed site plan with the variances. So with that, I can stop and answer any questions that you may have, or the applicant is ready for their presentation.
All right, let's start with you first. Any questions for Director Teague at this point in time? Otherwise, we'll ask, yes, Member Staunton.
On this cross-section that's in front of us right now, I see some good horizontal dimensions. Do you have vertical dimensions, or is that a question for the...
They will have that in their presentation. Yeah,
Okay,
they've got more
super.
detail.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. DeVolis, are you going to lead this off? And I think, will 10, 15 minutes be enough time for you, for your team? You're going to need a handheld microphone there.
Thank you. Good evening. Dean DeVolis, DJ Architecture, 5009 Ridge Road, Edina, Minnesota. I'm here working with Bank of America. I'm an architect and also do a shoebox design. So part of my process on this. And Bank of America was kind of to come out here and brave the snowstorm because this is a very important project. Ray came from New York, Nathan's here, and the rest of the crew is all out here in terms of the project. So what I'm going to do is give a quick walkthrough of the project, explain why we did the design, the elements, how it works, urban design, and so forth. So that's going to be the component of this presentation. And this is the site plan that Carrie showed. And what we're trying to do with this is start to create an edge to the site. You have to see right through here, which will be a stone wall, and then lined with arborvitae. And what that does, it ties in the ATM, it defines the edge of the bank, and then it helps play up these major entry points that we've made to connect the street. And this is a theme that will be used in continuing the future redevelopment of the rest of the site to the north. So what we're starting to do is try to create an edge to what is really a suburban style development and start to define and anchor these edges. So it's not just a street, sidewalk, parking lot condition, but we start to create a green edge, and then the building opens up at various appropriate points along that. And the drive-through in this location works much better, especially tied in with this great sweeping curve, so it becomes part of the architecture and part of the site definition, and tucking in this corner low basically takes it out of sight, but still provides the convenience of it and does not kill the future redevelopment of the site. So it does a lot of components at work, and I'll get into that a little bit later. The other thing to note is the plan. We've taken all the elements of the bank and pulled them inside the glass box. So everything that was on the outside that created blank walls have been pulled in, and the activity has been pulled around the perimeter. So you notice that the corridor runs around the outside, the conference rooms, and all the elements open up now to the street. So the building's sort of been flipped inside out to get the activity on there in the glass to really create a presence of the street, and the ATM's facing, so you always see activity, always see life to it, and then the definition of the landscaping and so forth. And we eliminated the pond in front with an underground system, so the building looks much more tied with the street and really becomes an anchor of this corner, much like we did in the 70th development. We did 70th and France, the same idea of emphasizing corridor, creating activity, trying to anchor these important corners on France Avenue. And so with that, the idea of making the main glass box, opening the bank, getting all the elements inside, and really trying to make a sort of a Parthenon of this major two-story banking lobby and have that expressed directly to the street with entrances, the plazas connecting it, and then you notice the stone wall which defines edge of site, and then the row of arborvitaes that come behind it. So the building now has a presence on the corner. It starts to anchor it and addresses it. So as the street develops to more of a future pedestrian environment, this building helped lead the way, much like the building at 7th and France did, that these starts creating these points of activity along France, which starts to give interest to it. So that's a view, obviously, looking towards, towards the southeast view. And this is the other side. So as you're coming from the other direction, moving south on France, this is what you would see. So I see the open activity, sort of the Parthenon addresses here with the plazas connecting to it in the bank. This is the back part, which is a part that faces along 69th. And again, you'll see the wall that defines the edge. the major entry components, the change of material. So again, there's a lot of activity with the building, but the same idea that it always opens and connects to the street and has that connection and presence to it. And then here are the various elevations, and I'll go through this, and this is where I want to talk to the material. So part of this building, probably what wasn't expressed before, Nathan, you want to give me a hand and just hold these up? So the main part of the building, which is here, which is a front, this is going to be an Indiana limestone. So this is going to be that. So it's a true mined stone. Actually, I say Italian, not Indiana. Actually, Italian limestone. My apologies. Got the wrong continent there. But this is going to be the major body of the bank, and that's this whole front portion you see here. So that's going to be that part of it. The back part is going to be this cut granite that's going to be stacked in these linear rolls that'll create and they'll be alternating inside and out like this, so that, especially considering tonight, some snow catches on the edges, and you get this idea of this rusticate approach, and that's this component back here. So it has a lot of texture, and that's sort of the same elements go on the wall. And then these panels here are the various eyebrows. The red eyebrows you saw on the front, the eyebrows you saw on the entry in the back, which is this, and this also. So the entire building from front, side, rear is all what you'd call class 1 material. It's either stone, glass, or metal panel. So it's all wrapped up in the same quality material. So then this is a view from the, looking directly from France Avenue. Again, the same glass and everything moved into your banking lobby, the opposite side, or the parking lot side, and then the rear side of the building. Now to the ATM portion. And what we've done here is develop that stone mulch you saw, and I'll get into that. That's about 4.5 feet high that creates that to maintain the boulevard, the sidewalk, a wall that has vines on it, the arborvitae, then the drive-through bank at a lower elevation. So what it does, it drops out of sight, and that wall that covers the whole site becomes an element of that component. And this is a view from the parking lot side, looking towards the west, seeing the wall and the drive-through. This is a view from the opposite side. And again, the idea that this wall, which eventually will help define the rest of the site, so it becomes a defining element, the green strip with the vines, the arborvitae behind it will eventually grow above the wall, and then the boulevard here. So what you're starting to do is get that edge, tuck this behind, and start creating definition to the side. And this same wall element ties in front of the bank and circles around the whole site in terms of that. And this is just a photorealistic view of the opposite corner, same view we took from before in terms of the element of the bank. And again, floor plan, and just showing that we moved conference rooms, offices, everything on the outside to activate the entire outside edge of the building. So the idea is that all 4 sides now have active uses. There's no dead spots within the building at all, so that everything has that kind of component action to it. And then the color board, as I mentioned, showing the various materials, which is they're all class 1, highly detailed, what I call very permanent type of materials that are serving longevity. So that's essentially an overview of the bank, so we stand for questions, and thank you very much.
All right, questions for Mr. DeVolis? Comments? Member Staunton?
So just to follow up, maybe you can put the cross-section up again. I'm just curious about the dimensions, vertical dimensions on that. So you said it was about 4.5 feet from the sidewalk to the top. Then what would it be from the top of that wall down to the road?
So this is an additional 3 feet here.
So 7 feet.
Correct.
Okay.
So what that does is entirely screen the car, makes that part invisible. And so it really makes that drop out of sight. Because we have this back in the middle of the lot, in the original thing, it'd be so much more visible as this. Right. Or if we're tucking the edge behind the wall, it just makes it disappear out of the sight line. So that was the basic idea. We thought the edge position worked much better.
Thank you.
Member Swenson.
I don't have any questions. All I have is a comment. You've done a great job.
Oh, thank you.
I like what you did with the drive-in and the wall, but I like how you extended that wall through the rest of the property. I like how you opened up 2 areas of the property to the sidewalk, and you really kind of defined this corner in a way that I didn't feel was defined before. You chose building materials that I know I'm not allowed to comment on, but I'm going to anyway, that are beautiful. And I appreciate your design and your work.
Thank you very much.
Member Stewart.
I want to say thank you for listening and then acting on what you heard from us before. I am not an architectural critic, despite my previous behavior. But you've given this some architectural interest, and I thank you for that. I'm surprised. I don't think the Board of Materials has changed significantly, but you've done some remarkably different things with those materials. And I have to confess, I thought the problem before was I thought Bank of America perhaps was being too stingy to treat Minnesota with the respect it deserved for its flagship operation. But I don't know if the budget's changed, but I think you've succeeded in giving us a building to be proud of here. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, we designed a better shoebox, so thank you very much.
I think it's called the international style.
Yes, correct.
Member Brindle.
Thank you. I actually was okay with the previous design in that it had a very specific brand, and it had a brand look that said Bank of America. In looking at other Bank of America buildings, they don't look like Bank of America, and this building had such a stark, unique look. When I looked at this, and I'll admit I had a little precursor because I stopped in at Jim's office one day, and he said, "Wait till you see this." And I love the contrast of the granite.
Thank you.
And I mean, you know how to use a pencil and make magic, and you also know how to take it from there to make it real. And you know, we've got a track record with you, and you've got a track record with us, and we know that this is going to be beautiful. The surrounding area with the retaining wall matching the granite is the finishing touch. The location of the ATM, I understand why it has to be there. I understand the owner of the property has other plans, and therefore being able to nest it a little more alongside the building isn't possible. So I think what is here, I'm totally fine with, and if it looks like that, we will be thrilled. So thank you.
It will. Thank you.
Yeah, boy, we know it will. We'll all jointly make sure that it looks like that. There are some things that we need to do from a governance standpoint. I think we've all got the same opinion here. I personally really like this international style of architecture. Like Member Brindle, I liked what was there before, but this is quite a marked improvement. And it really, I think, borders on the extraordinary. It's going to be a very, very special bank for Edina, for Bank of America for Minnesota, and probably Bank of America nationally. I would think this would be something that other communities would aspire to as you expand your brand, or you're redoing banks in other communities. I think you've done a great job of dealing with the things you need to deal with, the front setback variance, parking stall variance. I guess it's just those, is it parking stall variance and then the front setback variance?
For the drive-through.
For the drive-through, yeah. So I think that work was very well done. The way you've integrated the building to the street and the landscaping around it, and as Member Brindle said, with the granite wall, and the way you've caused the granite wall and the building itself to move in and out, I think is really important, so that you don't end up with this linear effect and you get this movement in the building. It'll be quite extraordinary. So I commend you. I commend Bank of America for listening to us. I know sometimes it was maybe hard to accept, but we all end up with a great product. Director Teague I think you hear the sentiment of the council that we'd like to see findings that we would approve this matter with respect to the design, with the materials that we've seen, and the other efforts they've made with the site plan to try to get themselves in conformance as best they can. You want to go back then? Do you want direction? Do you want it in the form of a motion, or do you think you have sufficient?
Yeah, I think a motion would be good.
Okay.
If I could just chime in. Thought we were asking questions, but it quickly went to comment.
We could have a motion and a second, then questions, but let's go ahead with the questions.
Well, I mean, I echo what others have said. I think it's a great improvement. We can have a lot of different ideas about the architecture and the design of the building itself. I really like what you've done with this notion of inside out, and it cleverly creates activity within the building that feels like it's just interacting with what's outside the building and the entryways. It's a tough corner. I think we originally were thinking about trying to square the corner. We came to the conclusion that wasn't a practical solution. I think you've done a nice job of, what I really like about it is it sets up a lot of things adjacent to it.
Exactly.
So that it starts to set the tone for what happens around the corner on France, but it also starts to set this tone along Valley View, where the drive-up is. You've created this wall. My hope for Valley View is that eventually it becomes a more pedestrian-oriented and perhaps bike trail spur off of the 9-mile trail, and then you engage that corner. So it really, what I'm impressed by is that you've taken a very challenging shape and actually used it to your advantage as opposed to being sentenced by it. So I think it's a terrific change, and I'm enthusiastic in supporting it as well. And I would make a motion to direct staff to draft findings and a resolution for approval of the variances.
Second?
Second, yeah.
I've got a motion and a second, as stated, to approve this matter with the variances stated. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Carried.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Really appreciate it. Look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for braving the weather.
Hanging in there and coming back. We appreciate it.
Yeah. And we look forward so much to having you in our community. So. All right, next matter is the setting of the date for the 2016 canvassing of election results. Clerk Mangan, you have this matter.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yes, the statute requires the City Council to sit as the canvassing board for municipal elections. You need to do your work between the 3rd and 10th day following the election. We have typically in past years met on Friday evening. However, this year Friday is Veterans Day and City Hall is closed because that's a national holiday. So staff is suggesting one of 2 days for the council to do their work as the canvassing board, either Monday the 14th at 5 p.m. or Tuesday before your normal work session at 5 p.m. You would have a work session at 5:30 and you could do sit as the canvassing board at 5 p.m.
Council preferences, Member Swenson?
5 p.m. on Tuesday, the 15th, I think sounds great.
Yep, before the work session, that sounds great.
Other comments?
I'm indifferent.
Works for me.
Yep.
Well, we
All right.
have to have a certain number here, so it's really important to make it at a good time, so that's why I think that's a good solution.
All right. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second? Member Swenson?
Second.
All right. We got a motion and a second to set the date for the 2016 canvass of election results on November 15th at 5 p.m. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried. And next, Manager Neal, we're going to take up the Cornelia Drive sidewalk project design. This is something the council has previously voted on in terms of wanting to put a sidewalk on Cornelia according to the design that was set forth by staff. We have again looked at this issue, and you wanted to introduce the topic, and I think Director Milner is going to finish up, and then the council will discuss it.
I do. Thank you, Your Honor. Members of council, I think what I want to ask you for tonight is and I've tried to be clear about it in the council documents, is a reaffirmation of your previous actions on this item. I think one of the things that we have encountered as staff in moving this project forward from the two other occasions when council has seen it is we've been getting quite a lot of feedback from the neighborhood that they believe the project is still it's unclear to them about whether it's a real project or not, whether it's our intention to do the project, and also whether or not the city is really fully committed to the particular project design that you've previously seen and previously endorsed. Some of that information that has come back to us has caused a little bit of concern from staff that we want to make sure before we begin the process of really taking this project out to the marketplace with final design, that we make sure that we have adequately and accurately interpreted your actions on this. And so that's what we're here to do tonight, is to seek a reaffirmation of what we've previously presented to you. And the reason we're here tonight to do that is we have reached a critical point in this project where it's a couple of weeks from actually going out to bid. And we have, as you know, we've received some state funding that pays for a significant percentage of this project. If we're not committed, or if our commitment level has changed to this project in such a way that we are no longer committed to doing it, we should make that decision now so that we don't finish these project plans, and so that we can alert MnDOT to return these grant monies to them so that some other community can use them. We hope, and I speak for staff in this case, that you will approve the reaffirmation request that we have for you tonight, so that we've got all the council legitimacy, the political legitimacy we need to not only to finish the project internally, but also to communicate that very clearly to the neighbors. And they've had, I know you've received a lot of communication on this, both some opposed to the project and also quite a lot in favor of the project. So that's what we're looking for tonight. That would be important to us as we finish up this project. I'd be happy to answer any questions, or if you have questions about the actual design and maybe the rationale behind it, Director Milner is here this evening to answer some of those more detailed questions. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Director Milner, did you have a presentation at all?
Well, I do have a lot of details in the presentation on kind of how we got to where we are in schedule. If you want, I could run through that. If you just want to answer, I'd be happy to answer questions, so I'll go either way.
Preference of council? I've seen the presentation. You've given me a hard copy of it again.
Yep.
I know that some of you have been out and met with neighbors like I have. Some of you have walked again, Cornelia, like I have. So I don't know if anyone has comments. Member Stewart, any thoughts in terms of changing your mind as to the necessity for this or the alignment?
I think as a general principle for council business, I think it's a terrible precedent to reopen issues that have been decided. So I think it's, I'm actually disappointed it would be on the agenda, and I don't think we should have to reaffirm decisions that have been made. So I'm staying put. Now, in terms of design, whether the sidewalk is all along the west side or half along the west and half along the east side of the street, I believe that staff is in the best position to make that determination, so I'm delighted to leave that to staff.
Member Swenson?
You know, I didn't support a meeting last December and I thought the meeting when it was supported was just a description of what the design was and why. So I've been in favor of this project all along. We have a grant to do it, and if you need me to vote on it again, I can certainly do that. But our staff does a really good job, and I'm not about to second guess them now.
All right. Member Sutton?
I'd echo those comments on the substance of it. I think, we need to rely on staff for a lot of the detail that is getting created here. Given that, I kind of feel like I'm here to look and see if there's big mistakes, if there's a big problem with it, but if there's not, I don't know that I need to substitute my judgment for the staff. Could a sidewalk be on the other side in one place and not on the other side in another place? This one looks like it was a close call on a lot of things. What I'm more interested in is just trying to continually refine the process that we've got to make sure we're finding the right opportunity for the public to engage on the design features. And I think we did that pretty well here, but we need to keep working at it. And I had some nice conversations with Chad about, we try on our street projects to be 3 years in advance when we're starting this process. We can't always do this on these standalone projects because we're only a year ahead of the grant time. So I understand that, but the more we can continue to communicate with members in the neighborhood, people who are really experts in the neighborhood about the configuration as far in advance as possible, I think that's really important. And then to make a decision and then not go back and revisit it. And I think here there was some confusion about that perhaps, and so I'm always willing to listen to anybody who's got something to share with me, but I think we're on the right track in terms of having a sidewalk there, and I'm not persuaded that there's enough of a change here, or enough of any errors here in the way that this has been laid out that I would support changing our mind. And I guess I would just encourage us to continue to craft our process to be clear with members of the neighborhood when we're putting sidewalks in as to exactly when their opportunity for input is and when the window is going to close on that input, so that there's not confusion a year later when the project is coming back to us.
Good. Thank you. Member Brindle?
Thank you. Projects like this take a long time, and so it is communication over a long time. And so I think we are challenged to make sure everyone is included in the communication process, and then there's a gap of time, and we just have to keep our finger on the pulse of making sure that as much as we can, make sure that the communication is out there in front of residents. I think that's maybe the biggest concern I've heard, was that we heard there was going to be a sidewalk, and then all of a sudden there it was, and we didn't have any input on the design and didn't realize it was a done deal, or not a done deal, but that the design was set. And so if the communication during that period of time, and I wasn't watching it, I'll admit that, but if the communication during that period of time can be clearer, more methodical, and maybe residents know where to look online to see what the design looks like. Because frankly, that's where I go look at designs, is in the engineering website, and there it is. And I can go look at it. But if a resident isn't aware of where that is, we need to, I suppose, just make sure that we've done our due diligence of getting that out there. We did decide on this sidewalk. This is a sidewalk that actually could have gone in before I became a council member. And it is a sidewalk that connects a school and a park. And it serves it will serve the residents on Cornelia Drive, but more importantly, it will serve the broader community. And that's what sidewalks are for, and that's why they're positioned where they are positioned, is to make the area safe, not just for the people who live there, but for the people who visit there on days where there are celebrations. And one of the biggest celebrations that brings people to this area is the 4th of July. And so it will be important. the design of the sidewalk, I had a conversation with Director Milner after having a variety of conversations with residents via email as well as on the telephone about where to cross, and I'm not going to second guess what the engineer is recommending. One of the questions was, when crossing at 68th, taking that sidewalk just north of the driveway, you know the driveway I mean, and then coming across makes a bit of a stub of a sidewalk before coming across. And so I guess I'd like to understand the engineering need for that movement.
Well, if we need to, I can open up a graphic and show you, but the sidewalk will go through the driveway, and right alongside is going to be a ped ramp. There's going to be no boulevard in that location because of the steepness of the two driveways. So it's going to be a ped ramp right alongside the driveway, and you go right across. So the stop sign's just going to be moved a few feet north with a painted crosswalk.
All right.
To get to the east side there.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you. I have nothing else. I do not wish to change the prior decision made by council.
I think I may have been one of the sources of inadvertent problem making, if you want to call it that. When we talked about having the December meeting, which was to be technical in nature, to show the neighbors what was going to happen, I think that inadvertently became a basis for the neighborhood to think not only about, to think primarily about alignment. So I don't like the notion of sitting here either thinking about reaffirmation, but I can tell we're all going to do that tonight and affirm what's gone before. And it gets reinforced if you go out on the site. You can agree, and I think the engineering folks do, that it's a close call as to certain elements of it on east side versus west side, but on balance, I think good decisions were made to go down the west side to 68th and then cross over to the east side and then head all the way down to the park to 66th. It is a solid route. I think for people on the west side and the east side that end up with segments of sidewalk, it's going to be a wonderful thing. They're going to be grateful they've got it, and it's going to be a property enhancer and a value enhancer on top of it, because more and more young people coming into these neighborhoods want sidewalks. And I would say the last 2 days, I've gotten more affirming emails that, to say stick with your decision from young people to middle-aged people in the neighborhood than we ever got during the process. So I think the council is making the right decision. So I'll entertain a motion to affirm the earlier decision of this council with respect to the sidewalk on Cornelia and the alignment of that sidewalk as recommended by staff.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Carried. All right. Next matter is Resolution 2016. Oh, first of all, one final thought. Member Staunton raised this with regard to process, and I've asked some of the people in the neighborhood to think about how we can refine our process. And they're going to make those comments to us, I think, after the fact. And that's something we've been striving for years, whether it's a street reconstruction project or a sidewalk project like this. We're constantly trying to enhance our communication, as Member Brindle mentioned. And so I think getting some resident input on how to refine the process and make us more effective communicators is a good thing. All right, on to the next matter, which is Resolution 2016-22, accepting various grants and donations. We know that if we're going to get grants and donations from people under state law, we have to have a 4/5 vote. Is there a motion to adopt this resolution?
So moved.
I got a motion and a second to adopt 2016-22, accepting various grants and donations. Discussion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried. And the donors' names will be posted on the website. And then
I will just say a couple of things
Thank you.
about the donations, if I may. And I'm going to pull them up 2 of the donations, actually 3 of them, come from the Edina Crime Prevention Fund. One for canine expenses. Just letting you know that Blade is through the end of the year. Is that what it is? He's going to retire at the end of the year.
Correct.
Okay, so he'll be 7.5 approximately at that time, and so one of the donations for $11,142.56 is for canine expenses, paying expenses from 2015. And then the Edina Crime Fund holds the Fall Into the Arts Festival in September of each year. And this festival netted about $50,000. And so the agreement is that 50% of that gets held by the crime fund and used for the Edina Police Department. The other 50% is split evenly then between the Edina Arts Center and Centennial Lake. So that's the other 2 crime fund donations. I just wanted to explain those and let people know that the crime fund is out there, and 100% of the dollars raised by the crime fund come to benefit the city.
Thank you, Mary. The mayor had to step away for a second. Correspondence and petitions. We don't have anything different than what we have on the dais.
No, we don't.
Aviation noise update. We did get a letter that just came in today on aviation noise. A few of the things that I think this resident thinks currently are possible, and they aren't anywhere near possible, unfortunately, are mitigation for homes in Edina. The noise mitigation contours for us don't go anywhere near what currently would be mitigated, and what the Mac Airport MSP does right now is way more than any other airport in the nation, and it did so because of a lawsuit that happened from Minneapolis a number of years ago. So I'm worried that we've set some expectations for things that we have the ability to do that our residents don't understand. The other thing is limiting takeoff times. We have no ability to do that. The FAA and the MAC. I mean, the FAA controls it, the MAC can't even limit them. And rerouting that centralizes takeoff. So the airport is such a complex subject, and it's so hard because we explain these things periodically, and we've had some learning things. So I'm not really sure how to respond to the kind of letter that we got, where so much of what she needs for herself and wants, and I get why she does, isn't really anything we have any control over. Right. And that's disappointing to say to someone. But, I suppose if she were living in Buffalo and the train stopped on the tracks and she couldn't get out of the city of Buffalo, which that happens all the time, the trains take precedent over what the city needs too. So it's a very complicated federal and state government situation. But I just thought we needed to kind of review that a little bit. So I think you've got some. Do you have some comments today now?
Well, we do, and as
And a proposed resolution as well.
Councilmember Schmitz and members of council, I think you've summarized pretty well that our advocacy, our role is largely of advocacy for certain positions, and we take that role very seriously. I know the council does, and staff does as well. And the item that's on your agenda tonight is evidence of that. This particular item is another item that we have adapted from a resolution that's been previously adopted by the St. Louis Park City Council. It's been urged by a number of cities that surround MSP to adopt similar language, asking essentially for 2 things. One, wanting the FAA to take a look at changing the methodology it uses to measure noise in the first place. And second, then to apply that and really remap the areas of the DNL, the day-night noise level maps that are used to make judgments about such things as mitigation, sound mitigation, and other benefits that they might provide. So that's really this. There's a fairly detailed staff report and the resolution that goes along with it, but that's essentially what we're asking for from the council tonight. If the council adopts this resolution, we've committed to presenting it to FAA ourselves or with the mayor, and we should or may be able to do that in Washington, D.C. personally. We'd also discuss this proposal with the NOC, the Noise Oversight Committee, and we'd ask that this item be considered for additional lobbying, both at the state level and at the federal level. We have, as a community, been very engaged in the last 4 years in this subject. I don't see any. I don't see that dissipating any with this particular council. So we'll continue to be engaged and continue to do our best to communicate our concerns and needs on aviation noise to the people that can do something about that.
The really interesting thing about this twofold is one, St. Louis Park sent a similar resolution, and their ability to do it and their ability to make it personal as to what they had heard over their city was that they were able to get a monitoring device for the same 2-week period that we had the 2 monitoring devices. And we have to thank actually Ron Earhart, our state representative, because he was the ones that convinced the city, or the NOC and the MAC, that these were important things to do. So we've used that tool now, and what we heard based on that tool to embed it into the resolution. So for the first time, we've actually had monitoring that we've never had before, and I think that's important. We still would like permanent monitoring, but that's a different issue and goes to a different group of people. So I'm really happy that you put together this sound resolution, and I would be very supportive of it. And I think that it gives us a tool, another tool in our advocacy that's important.
Would you want to move the matter?
I will. So moved.
So second. Discussion? Other discussion? Member Staunton, any follow-up? Okay. Member Stewart? All right. All those in favor of the motion as stated, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Carried. Mayor and council comments. Member Staunton.
Just wanted to share many of us were over. Councilmember Brindle was at another event, but it was a week ago Friday, or maybe last Friday. It was just last Friday. That we went to the fish fry snowshoe event at Braemar, at Tin Fish in Braemar. It was terrific. It was just the place was hopping. It was buzzing. It
Week
was.
and a half ago. Yeah.
And it's just a little indication of what potential that whole Braemar Park has to be more than just golf. And I think we can do some really great things out there. And I think there were families that were out there that didn't even know about the snowshoe fish fry. They were just bringing their kids out to have dinner, and they encountered this buzzing place, and it was great stuff.
And we're going to try to duplicate it.
Well, I think we should keep trying to duplicate it, because it's really a great event, and I encourage people to be checking out the website and what's happening there, and we need to, as I've been saying, continue to get better at figuring out a go-to place for folks to check up on that stuff. But that's the one comment, is I just thought that was a terrific event. I was so energized by it.
And Member Swenson, if we do it again, can Member Staunton borrow your husband's snowshoes again? Or do you want him to come over?
And I'll help you put on yours, too. No, I know that Hoygards is working with Joe Boot out at Braemar, and I'm hoping that Sunday, so look on this calendar, but Sunday, February 14th would be the next time, and we could potentially have even more snowshoes to bring, which would be fun. And we have snow tonight for it, so it's perfect.
Good.
I saw a movie that the Energy and Environment Commission put on a few days ago called Burden. It was about the cost of moving fuel and for soldiers overseas, and what that does, and the danger it puts people in, and the incredible time and manpower along with the money it takes to do it. It was a fabulous movie. We sat around and discussed it afterwards. And I thank them for bringing it in. I think they're going to get a copy, if they can, over to the library. And I know I ran into Manager Neal and the mayor at the Byerly's open house for their new apartments. We got a tour, and it was a lot of fun to be there, and a lot of excitement about that apartment building, and new people have moved in. They're about a third full in their first building, I think, now. Finishes for the building are beautiful, and boy, they've got a great location right on the promenade. So they're very excited about what's going on there.
All right, good. Member Brindle.
All right. Thank you. I have a few things. While you were at Braemar on the 22nd of February, Ralph and I were at Edina High School seeing Peter the Starcatcher. And just huge congratulations for Edina High School and the thespians over there, and Tony Mathis for his leadership. Edina High School was one of 3 high schools in the nation to be invited to put on this show, and they were the first to be able to do it. So I think they may have done a drawing or something to choose which of the 3 would go first, and Edina got the chance to go first. So it was very well done. The kids did a fabulous job. The wealth of talent at the high school is really amazing in theater, in all sorts of areas. Mayor Hovland and I attended a ribbon cutting at a new post-secondary school that is opening in Edina for business on February 8th. American Higher Education College is a trade school located at 4444 West 76th Street. And it is a trade school, and it is part of a larger organization that has the American Higher Education Development Corporation that has campuses in Florida, Ohio, Tennessee, Illinois, Wisconsin, and this is its 2nd campus in Minnesota. The other campus is the Minneapolis Media Arts Media Institute that is also on the same street. But this trade school offers training and diplomas for students in the occupations of medical assistants, medical coding, medical billing, paralegal, and heating, ventilation, and air conditioning service and repair. So
That's just one person
yeah,
with all those skills.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I'm just teasing.
So congratulations to them and welcome to Edina. They can accommodate about 300 students, I think they said. Then I attended a meeting on Friday last week to start a discussion about regional rail and the possibilities of having rail come through Edina that could carry commuters to the light rail, to connect to Amtrak. So it started a very exciting conversation. It's an extremely expensive proposition, so it's one that we'll be talking about for a while. But in the continued redevelopment of Edina, I think it's very important that we look at the possibility for rail and make sure that is kind of woven into how the redevelopment takes place. Last week, I actually had 3 activities that were related to CAPSH, Community Action Partnership of Suburban Hennepin. I went and interviewed for my board chair so I can remain on the board. I go interview every year because I have a 1-year term. And
you call yourself downtown.
I do.
Yes,
I do.
I've done that too, Mary.
And they took me. They took Cynthia Bemis Abrams from Bloomington first, and they took me second. So we were both there for about 10 minutes, and then I was back on light rail and back home, and in no time. Let's see here. Also, there was a public hearing, and this was very interesting. The Minneapolis has made it public that it is their choice to designate CAPSH as their community action agency for the city of Minneapolis, which means CAPSH would be the community action agency for all of Hennepin County. So there was a public hearing presided by Chief Administrative Law Judge Chief Poots, and she was very good. She has some nice levity to her manner and presentation. She was very good. And there were 20 or 25 people who testified. It was really, really terrific. And you talk about reaffirmation. Everyone was complimentary of the work of CAPSH. So CAPSH provides services for people who live in poverty. So it's energy assistance, it's counseling on financial management, mortgages, foreclosure prevention, tenant training, and expungement, which means returning to society after being incarcerated. So they do the tough work, and they do it very, very well. I attended the meeting of Southwest Corridor Light Rail Community Works Committee. Jim Hovland and I are on that committee. I'm his alternate. And at this meeting, we adopted the corridor-wide housing strategy. So that resolution, I just have to remember to email it to Manager Neal, and I will do that and get it to the council because it's something I would like to see Edina adopt. Because as development takes place along the line, areas along the north and west part of Edina are close enough to the line to take into account some of the housing strategy that was adopted. And finally, my last one, I serve on the Southdale Y Board of Directors, and I'm working on the spring benefit, and we are doing Back to the Future at Southdale Center in Center Court on Sunday, May 22nd, with a DeLorean and lots of surprises to have a little Back to the Future celebration and celebrating the Southdale Y. So you'll hear more about that, but just to give you a little save the date, May 22nd, Sunday, 6 to 9. Thanks.
Thank you. Member Stewart.
Thank you. On Thursday, January 21st, I attended a meeting that was held at the Public Works Building regarding Grandview, and I thought it was a very constructive meeting. And of all the Grandview meetings we had, I thought the most collegial, where views were shared, inputs were invited, and I thought very constructive engagement. I still think we're a long way from putting a shovel in the ground on that, so but I do appreciate the engagement by staff and everybody who's actively interested in what we're going to do with that site, so thank you. I also attended that fish fry and snowshoeing event at Braemar on Friday the 22nd. I just want to thank Tin Fish. I thought they did an outstanding job, and I thought not easy to do when they have, I think, greater numbers than anticipated. So really hats off to them, and also to Hoygaard's. Great to see people out there getting some evening exercise out in the snow and really enjoying Minnesota in the wintertime, which is a nice thing. We had the next night, the 23rd, a progressive dinner in my neighborhood at Viking Hills, which was fantastic, and it's nice to have these little neighborhood communities that get together for that kind of thing. So, and we've already begun our interviews for those who are going to serve on boards and commissions, and we've had the first of 4 evenings of interviews, but I just want to say once again thank you to all the people who stepped forward to serve this community in these capacities. We have such a wealth of talent in Edina. I just continue to be impressed, and I enjoy meeting these candidates for the boards and commissions. So thank you to those people. The application process is closed now, so if you have an interest in doing that when it comes around next year, we hope you will. This coming Monday, the 8th of February, is the Chinese New Year, so Gong Xi Fa Chai to everybody who's celebrating. We'll begin the Year of the Monkey on Monday.
Oh, excellent.
And there will be a celebration then on Saturday the 13th at Valley View Middle School starting at noon, so it's a great time. On Wednesday, February 10th, there's an open house for Highway 169 reconstruction that's going to be held from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock at Hopkins High School. So if you have an interest in the reconstruction, which I believe begins this summer on Highway 169, it's very extensive, and that bridge between Lincoln and Bren Road bridges will be taken out for a year, so prepare. And then for those who are interested, on Thursday, February 11th, Adam Dunink of the Met Council is going to be giving a State of the Region address at down in Burnsville at 10:30 in the morning, if you have an interest in that.
He's the chair of the Met Council.
Yes.
Yes.
And if you have an interest in seeing him locally, he'll be at our Rotary Club,
Coming up here.
Oh,
I think next week.
next
Adam Dunning.
Tuesday morning.
Yeah.
Tuesday morning. You're welcome to come over.
All right. And then I'm on the policy committee for the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District. We do have a meeting coming up on Tuesday the 16th. People who have an interest in that and have inputs for me, things they want me to pay particular attention to, I would invite your input and questions and suggestions on that. And our next meeting will be on Wednesday the 17th. So I have to miss basketball.
He's the 16th.
Good. He's the 16th?
Yeah,
Adam Dunning?
Adam's the 16th.
2 weeks from today. Mm-hmm. All right, good. Well, I know many of you are eager to get home. It's this snow coming down, and I had to buy a new snowblower at Jerry's, so I'm going to go test that thing out. But nonetheless, I got a few things to cover with everybody here. Member Brindle, when she talked about the crime fund, caused me to think about something that happened a few months ago. Our chief was instrumental in arranging with one of the Hennepin County Public Defenders who lives in Edina, who told us, I think it was Manager Neal and myself, that there were some people that she was representing when their court dates were done in Edina, they had no way to get home.
Right.
And could we help with bus passes some way, somehow? And the crime fund has stepped up to the plate on that and agreed to provide bus passes for people that are having a tough time getting home after a court appearance in Edina. And I want to thank the PD for that good work and coordinating everything on that. Out at the golf course, the snowshoe, fish fry, beer tasting event, it was great to see people there. Member Stewart was holding forth in the back room, doing a great job visiting with all kinds of people. Member Swenson, I want to really thank you for adding the snowshoe component to this whole thing. And I had so many people tell me how great the folks from Hoygards were and how helpful they were and just what wonderful people they were. So I want you to pass that along to them too. And I think it's a reflection of you and the folks that help hire some of these people. And of course, some of those folks
live in our city.
Yeah, live in our town and have been working at Hoygards as long as you have. So that was wonderful. I remember Staunton and my wife and I slogged around the hill and came back in and enjoyed ourselves. Last Saturday I went over to Quinn's Cup, which is an event that is evolving into something of quite significance. Kara Livin was there for a couple hours in the morning. Fox TV was there. They told me they had 250 plus skaters last year, and they had over 500 skaters this year. And looking for the event to get larger next year, and the people that came from other towns, like New Prague, I believe was one of them, just had a wonderful time and are eager to come back and celebrate in Edina again. And Kyle Kirsch, Quinn's dad, was really pleased, I think, to be able to raise the kind of money they raised to help with the research that's going on. Member Brindle mentioned the ribbon cutting at American Higher Education College, the 71 France opening. Member Swenson mentioned a beautiful set of buildings. Got a Southwest Corridor Management Committee meeting tomorrow morning. We had a tab meeting on the 20th where we set the parameters for the 2016 regional solicitation, and that was some heavy lifting that day, but we got it done. This Saturday is the Emerald Gala for the Chamber of Commerce. Many of us will be there. That's a nice celebration with them. And then if folks saw a week or so ago, there was an article in the paper, a young guy, Stanley Wu, who was a sophomore at Edina High School, said he'd had a hard time meeting his neighbors, had written to our council earlier, so I got a hold of him over the weekend, and he came to our Rotary Club this morning because we had a couple of young high school students there that are involved in Interact, and he got to meet them. We took some pictures, and I think that was helpful for him to meet some people over at the high school, and he still wants to visit about things we can do to activate the community a little bit more, although I think he doesn't know about all the things that are going on either, and asked him about Chinese New Year's, and I don't think they'd ever attended, he and his family, and so I encouraged him to attend that event as well coming up. Monday, this is yesterday, Dick's Barbers hosted CBS Sports, and they set up a shoot over there for the Super Bowl. Now, whether they're going to try to make it appear that Dick's Barbers is in San Francisco or Charlotte or or Denver, I'm not sure, but they were in there shooting yesterday at Dick's Barbers. So good for Dick's. And then when we were out at the snowshoe event, ran into Joe Abood, who runs the golf course, and we talked a little bit about the activities involved with the golf course architect, how he was coming along, how the technical compliances were coming along with the watershed district, and we're doing really well on the technical side, I understand, in achieving these compliances that we need to achieve. And then on Sunday morning, periodically I'll go over to the Golf Dome, and that was really busy Sunday morning. And I just want to do a shout out to a couple of our golf pros over there. Joe Grupner, our head pro, was off on the east end of the dome. He had 3 players there, 3 amateur Minnesota golfers that were in the top 10 over there, and one of them, of course, is Sammy Schmitz, who's his student, who's won the U.S. Mid-Am, and as a consequence of that is going to the Masters. And so Joe will get to accompany him as his teacher coach to the Masters, get him behind the ropes on the range with all those famous players and golf instructors. He'll be right in there with the rest of them. And so that congratulations to Joe. And then Roger Fahrenkrug is instructing the top junior girl in the state, who I think is over at Visitation, if memory serves me right. So we've got some great teachers over there at Braemar, and we're grateful that they're here. And I think that's it for me. Manager Neal.
Thank you, Your Honor. I also have a date with a snow blower tonight, too, as soon as we're done here. But just 3 quick things. One, we've had a number of discussions over the past few months about the Liquor Store Task Force. The Liquor Store Task Force meets tomorrow for the first time at 2 o'clock. We kicked that process off. Tomorrow we're going to talk a lot about the nature of municipal liquor in the state of Minnesota. We have some assistance from the MMBA is going to provide some background on sort of the parameters of what we can and can't do in terms of managing our liquor operation. So we're looking forward to that and setting the table for that process to begin. Councilmember Stewart mentioned board and commission interviews. You, of course, have another set of board and commission interviews on Thursday night. We have 63 applicants for board and commissions this year. That's the most we've had in recorded history, however we want to think about that. So that's a big deal. The final thing is just to update you that Councilmember Brindle and I have met to talk about HRA bylaws. She's done really the lion's share of the work on reformatting some bylaws and getting them ready for the council and the HRA to take a look at, modeled after, I believe, Roseville? Is that Roseville's bylaws, which really have added a lot of contemporary features to our bylaws. I think you're going to like them. So those are on their way to you, and we'll present them to you at the next HRA meeting in a couple of weeks. That's all I've got.
Manager Neal, I had a question for you.
Yes.
And that was, do you recall when our MLC breakfast is for our region?
I believe it's...
Because I had the first one last week that I attended over at the League of Minnesota Cities building for the east side.
I think it is the 19th, perhaps? The 19th, yes.
19th of February?
Yep, 19th of February.
7:30 in the morning.
7:30
Yeah.
Plymouth Creek Center.
Good.
So
I'd
not
encourage
at the-
everybody to try to get there.
Yeah.
One of the big
hotel.
issues, one of the big issues raised over there were they're going to be addressing at the legislature are body cameras. And so I don't know if our PD has looked at that or weighed in
Oh,
on
yes.
it.
Yep.
I think most people are taking a wait-and-see attitude with the legislature, but trying to figure out what's private, how to maintain all that data seems to be the biggest problem that they're facing. So, anything else from anybody on the council that prompt anybody to think of anything else they wanted to address? All right, we stand adjourned.